to be bred into existence, bought and sold, broken in, trained, whipped like this. They don't deserve to be hurt. Simple as that.
Okay, so, I think that is a massive point of difference, because Alistair, and you're perfectly entitled to this view, obviously, but essentially doesn't think that these sports should exist, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, Alistair, but really that animals like that should be kept in captivity and all of that stuff. Whereas Lady C, you just think that this lady should keep her job, and that she's the victim of some kind of woke animal rights campaign.
First of all, anybody who knows about horses knows that they have very thick skins. They're not human beings. They don't have very thin skins. That's the first thing. The second thing is they wouldn't exist. People don't seem to understand. Farm animals, race horses, dressage horses, they wouldn't exist if the sport didn't exist. They're being bred for a purpose. Without the purpose, they wouldn't exist. Are we seriously suggesting that we should be so loving towards animals that they should exist exist? And also, to say that dressage is exploitative, the way, say, children in India being exploited in the clothing industry is just preposterous. I'm sorry. It's a leap too far. It's a horse. And she didn't injure the horse. She clearly didn't enjoy what she was doing. And the alternative could have been that she and the owner were trying to save the horse from the knacker's yard. Let's have a sense of proportion here. Nowadays, everybody is very happy to condemn out of context. Let's have things in context.
All right.
And why should her career be destroyed? It's ridiculous.
All right, look, both of you, thank you very, very much. Definitely got both sides of that. So that is a former British Army officer and Animal Rising spokesperson there, Alistair Stewart, and royal commentator Lady Colin Campbell. Thank you. So in a statement, Charlotte Dujardin said, a video has emerged from 4 years ago which shows me making an error of judgment during a coaching session. Understandably, the International Federation for Equestrian Sports is investigating, and I have made the decision to withdraw from all competition, including the Paris Olympics, while this process takes place. What happened was completely out of character and does not reflect how I train my horses or coach my pupils. However, there is no excuse. I'm deeply ashamed and should have set a better example in that moment. I'm sincerely sorry for my actions and devastated that I've let everyone down, including Team GB, fans and sponsors. Quite a mea culpa there, it must be said. So, who do you agree with? That video ended Charlotte Dujardin's Olympic dream. Do you think the punishment was too harsh? Kenneth on X has been in touch. There is a Dutch sex offender who raped a young girl competing at the Olympics, but Dujardin gets banned for whipping a horse. Madness. That is a very good point, I must say, Kenneth. That is a fact. There is a Dutch sex offender who raped a young girl competing at the Olympics, whereas a woman who whipped a horse is not. So there we go. Louise says, not harsh enough as the punishment. And Patrick, great name on X, says the punishment didn't go far enough. Being cruel to an animal for her own gain is disgraceful. Right. 36% of you think the punishment is too harsh. 64% of you say it is not. So you're definitely on the side of the horse there. Coming up, Keir Starmer has a new catchphrase, everybody.
We have a more severe crisis than we thought as we go through the books.
Get used to that. He's going to keep saying it. But are Labour paving the way for an enormous tax raid on pensioners and the middle class? Top political commentator Theo Usherwood is live shortly. Plus, this no-nonsense policing has divided opinion online. But do we want a police force or a police service? We'll debate that at 10. Next, though, Lee Anderson is live in the studio. We talk benefits, we're talking Labour's prison chaos and more potential Tory defections. Don't go anywhere.
Hello again and welcome along to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Gloomy skies overnight and into the start of Thursday for many of us. Outbreaks of rain, but it will turn brighter later on. Now, we started Wednesday with a ridge of high pressure. Didn't last long. Weather fronts are now moving in from the west and they are thickening up the cloud in many parts of the UK and bringing extensive low cloud to western parts and southern parts of the country with hill fog, coastal mist and areas of rain and drizzle. Nevertheless, with the largely cloudy skies overnight, it is going to remain mild, in some places rather muggy, 15 or 16 Celsius first thing. But if you're in the south and southwest, expect a gloomy start to Thursday. A lot of low cloud covering the hills, bringing some mist and fog to coastal parts as well, and some more persistent and heavier bursts of rain into South Cornwall and South Devon through the morning. Wales, cloudy and damp, the worst of the drizzle and low cloud over hills. Likewise for northwest England, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, something a little brighter first thing, certainly for eastern Scotland. Some sunny spells coming through, largely dry here, showers pushing into western Scotland. And through the morning, we're going to see things cheer up across the northern two-thirds of the UK. The cloud will lift. There will be some cloud breaks, although there will still be some showers arriving across western Scotland, Northern Ireland into northern England. Mostly dry for Wales by the afternoon, as well as the Midlands, but for the south and southeast, outbreaks of rain, heavy at times, and as a result, significantly cooler compared with Wednesday. That rain's out of the way by Friday morning, and then for most, it's a much brighter start to the day. Sunny spells, but further showers are likely in places, especially, although not exclusively, across Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and western England. Saturday, more widespread and heavier downpours for a time, interspersed by sunny spells, sunshine on Sunday.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment.
This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory.
Don't miss my big opinion. Mark meets and my take at 10.
Democracy is a funny old thing.
And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it.
Go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it.
That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Pantry Christys tonight, only on GB News. And I'm joined now by Reform UK MP Lee Anderson. And let's get straight into it, Lee, because the former Labour Health Secretary, Alan Milburn, has issued the government with a report that says the long-term sick should be forced to seek work. Now, he found that 7 out of 10 of the economically inactive want to work, but few have any help or requirement to do so. So here he is, actually speaking to GB News yesterday.
If we're going to be able to fuel growth in the British economy, then we've got to get more of those people back into work, because otherwise you rely on more and more immigration, and as we know, that has become more and more politically toxic as an issue.
All right, Lee, so what do you make of that then? Do you think the Labour backbenchers will get behind the idea that we've got to give people who are off long-term sick a bit of a kick up the backside?
Well, probably not, Patrick, but just imagine if I'd have said that a few months back, people would have been the left would have been leaping on me. But he makes a fair point. There is a small percentage in this country, a tiny percentage of a work-shy sort of culture that will play the old bad back game. I think now they use mental illnesses and all sorts of stuff to get out of putting a shift in. There is a hardcore element that will just refuse to go to work. They're dependent on benefits, and it's high time we got these people off. But on the flip side, there are genuine people who's been labelled as long-term sick or disabled or whatever, that's felt uncomfortable to return to the workplace. We need to support these people and get them back in the workplace, get them producing, get them paying taxes and, you know, grow our economy. That's just common sense, that is.
You make a fair point, though, because during the election campaign, Rishi Sunak was saying that, you know, there are loads of people out there who can work, who they need to be given a nudge to get back into work because they're deliberately not. Keir Starmer's approach was, actually, I believe that they're all unwell, and if we sort the NHS out, they'll all go back to work. So that doesn't really chime with what that former Labour
it doesn't. I mean, Starmer's talking rubbish. You go to the poorer countries around the world, Patrick, where there's no benefit system in place, regardless of your disability or anything else. Those people go to work because if they don't work, they have to eat. So that proves my point that people in this country who have got a disability, who may have an illness, if they're supported correctly, they can go to work. Back after the war, many years ago, I think something like 95% of disabled people actually had a job. And the reason they had a job is because they were supported in the workplace.
OK, interesting stuff. Let's just whiz it on now and talk about prisons, actually, because last week Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood announced plans to release thousands of prisoners early by reducing the minimum sentence term spent in prison from 50% to 40%. Well, it turns out the public aren't happy with it. A new YouGov poll has found that a whopping 71% of people oppose this policy, while only 1 in 6 support it. Because also, as well, by the way, despite telling us they wouldn't, they're going to release violent criminals. So, lock your doors. But, Lee, where do Reform stand on this? Because Reform's policy in the election was more stop and search. Very popular policy.
Yes.
More stop and search. But more stop and search would mean more people in prison. Yeah. And we do not have room for them. So what would Reform do about this?
Well, first of all, Patrick, I think we've got about 10,000 foreign nationals in our prisons at the moment. I would be shipping them out first thing tomorrow morning. That'll free a little bit of space up. And we need to, we see people in this country, and this might seem controversial, but you know what? Look at our brave boys in the armed forces, in submarines and jobs like that that's defending the realm. They hotbed a lot of the time. I'd have some of these prisoners on 12-hour shifts out in the fields picking fruit and vegetables, and then they could have other criminals in the prison system. They could be sharing beds, 12 hours each. Get them working days, get them working nights, contribute towards society.
So double up. So basically, put let's say instead of 2 to a cell, 4 to a cell.
Exactly.
But have
Put
2 of them
there.
working night shifts and 2 of them working day shifts.
I mean, so there'd be some people out there thinking, "Oh, this is crazy." It's not crazy. Normal, decent, hard-working people do this. Go to places like Boston. They're hotbedding. Yeah. You've got 10 to a mattress in Boston in some of the housing accommodation there.
OK,
well, rocket science.
Oh, this is an interesting take, I must say. I mean, I wonder if that'll make it onto the next Reform Party manifesto. We'll have to see.
It'll be on Twitter later.
It probably will, Lee. Yeah. But GBNews has reported now that 4 Tory MPs are on a watch list to defect to Reform. Who are they, Lee?
Who's reporting this?
Well, this has been out there. It's been reported, Lee.
Well, look, I mean, it's no secret that the Conservative Party are in a little bit of trouble at the moment, and I would suspect, Patrick, that some of my colleagues, with hindsight, would probably wish that they'd joined the Reform Party a few months back. They would have kept the seats in the Red Wall. I think there was only me out of the 2019 intake that actually kept the seat in the Red Wall, and I was a Reform candidate this time. I wouldn't be surprised, come the autumn, when they've decided who their leader's going to be, or at least who's been shortlisted, that some people might come over. Do
you think if, and we're going to talk about this later, so the nominations to become the next Tory party leader opened at 7 p.m. tonight. Yeah. Later on, I've got one of Priti Patel's top allies, Greg Smith MP, on, so we'll be talking to him a bit about that in more detail. But do you think if the Tories choose a leader who's a bit wet, that actually you're anticipating that more people from the Tories will defect to Reform?
If the Tory party choose a wet, I want to have that extension built on the side of my house, because I'll be in Parliament for another 10, 15 years. I suspect they will do that. The Conservative Party, as it stands at the moment, bear in mind, Patrick, a lot of the good guys have gone. A lot of the, of course, solid Conservatives, they've lost their seat. It's probably, 80% wets in the Conservative Party at the moment. They're not in touch with the real world. They'll probably pick a wet, and that's a green light for the Reform Party, because then there's no difference. We've seen in PMQs today, it was so boring. The Conservative backbenchers and the front bench offered nothing in resistance to the Labour Party.
Well, it's interesting you said that. I mean, later on we're going to be having a chat about Nigel calling for an immigration referendum. He's already said he wants a referendum on the ECHR. Yeah. You look at it, and, people can agree or disagree with that, but it's an opposition. It's an opposite view. We've not really seen a huge amount of opposition yet. I suppose the Tories would say they're finding their feet or whatever. But just finally, Lee, Nigel Farage's first day in Parliament, he said that he would rely on you, right? You and you alone, to show him the ropes. But yesterday, he said, I walked through the voting lobby earlier this evening. Number 78, they said, no, I'm told I should have tapped my pass on a reader too. Talk about new boys' school. Where were you, Lee? You didn't tell Nigel how he had to vote in Parliament.
Well, look, Nigel's a good friend and a great colleague, but he needs to pay more attention. There was 5 of us went through the voting lobby. I'll be watching, Nigel. 4 of us tapped the cards. The thing is with Nigel, he gets distracted because everybody wants to talk to him, whether it's Conservative MPs, whether it's staffers, security men. Every 5 minutes, or every 5 seconds, when you're with him, on the estate, people stopping him for a selfie, they talk, he's getting distracted, so it's an easy mistake.
What's it like behind the scenes with Nigel? I know we have to be quick with this, but are there a lot of parliamentary staffers from, like, the Labour and the Tory party that are, like, constantly trying to...
Yeah.
Like, is he a bit of a celebrity?
It's like a Hollywood movie star walking through the estate. Everybody wants to have a selfie with him, so it's a little bit distracting, so sometimes I have to take him round the...
Do you think they agree with him, though, or do you think it's just because he's a bit of a celeb? Because I'm trying to piece together whether or not there's actually quite a bit of support from him amongst younger parliamentary staffers from other parties.
Yeah, especially with young people, Gen Z. I mean, go on TikTok, his following is amazing, and there was young people in Ashfield voted for me, not for me. They said they voted for me because they like Nigel on TikTok.
Well, there you go. You'll have to get him back to Ashfield at some point soon then. All right, Lee, look, thank you very much, as ever. Look, coming up, this no-nonsense policing has seriously divided opinion. So, we're going to debate whether we want a police service or a police force soon. But next, Sir Keir Starmer again claims public finances are worse than he thought. All right, that's his new catchphrase. Are Labour overplaying the crisis so they can tax you and pensioners a lot more money? Political commentator Theo Usherwood has got expert analysis on this, and it's next.
Tune in to Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan.
GB News royalty with
your perfect start to the weekend.
Lucky us.
Feisty and fearless guests.
Well, I'm a normal person, so ask me.
Honest opinions.
That raises more questions than a Gary Barlow tax return.
And a few surprises along the way.
Might be cold in this studio.
That is Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan. 8 to 9, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
Oh no, just when I thought it was safe, here we go round again. The target this time is one of the most recognisable landmarks in London. Standing at 176 feet tall, the Albert Memorial was commissioned by Queen Victoria in 1862 to honour her late husband, Prince Albert, and was built 10 years later, a year and a century before I was born. Now, situated in Hyde Park, the monument depicts a gold statue of the Prince, alongside 4 groups of large statues which represent the 4 continents of the world: Asia, America, Africa and Europe. Now, the statues representing Asia include a woman on an elephant. America is represented by a Native American with a bison. Africa shows a woman riding a camel, and there's a white European woman reading a book to a black African tribesman. Now, the Royal Park's website claims that these statues draw on racial stereotypes. The Royal Parks, who manage parks in London, deemed it as highly offensive because it reflects a Victorian view of the world. Of course, it reflects a Victorian view of the world. It was built in the Victorian era by request of Queen Victoria. Shock, horror. And it only reflects this view, if you even know what that is. Why would this be offensive? Surely you could at least appreciate the fact and the feat of this artwork, which is quite impressive, even now. Daily Mail journalist Robert Hardman went on a tour of those incredible tunnels, and he said it goes on and on like the catacombs until you realise that you're actually going round and round a series of concentric circles. This is a monument in itself to the technical rigour and pride which went into the Victorian engineering. Exactly.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
OK, this is Patrick Christys tonight on GB News. Welcome back. Now, coming up, do we need to have an immigration referendum? Nigel Farage thinks so. But first, it was this.
Dad was a toolmaker. He worked in a factory all of his life.
And now Sir Keir Starmer's got a new catchphrase. Here he was at PMQs earlier today.
We have a more severe crisis than we thought as we go through the books of the last 14 years. We must review...
Yeah, you're going to hear a lot of that. You're going to hear a lot of that. The crisis is worse than we thought. But could Starmer's handy new catchphrase pave the way for loads of tax rises? Reports today suggest Labour is planning a tax raid bonanza. Experts are warning that Chancellor Rachel Reeves could target capital gains and inheritance tax at the next budget. But there's more. I'm joined now by former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood. Theo, thank you very, very much. Now, talk me through, please, and our viewers, some of these tax raids, especially, I think, when it comes to pensions and pensioners.
This is a big deal, potentially, if it goes through at the budget, if Rachel Reeves brings it forward at the budget, because it could amount to £50 billion in tax raids on pensions, and I'll explain how it works briefly. So at the moment, if you earn, say, let's say £130,000 a year, so it's going to affect those... Well, anybody over 50 grand, but if you earn £130,000 a year, you can say, actually, I don't want to be into the top rate of tax at 45 pence on the pound. I don't want to be subject to the marginal rate of tax, which, of course, kicks in over 100 grand because you lose your personal allowance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take £40,000. I'm just going to put that straight into my pension. And that's tax-free at the moment. And that's a huge benefit. And it encourages people to save, right? It encourages you to do the right thing, the responsible thing, and save for your retirement. Now, what's being proposed, or the idea that I think is going to be proposed at the budget, is to introduce a flat rate of tax on your pension at 30%. So what happens is that anything above 30% is going to get taxed. So that anybody who earns 50 grand or more and then puts that money into a pension, and we're talking people with ordinary jobs here. Many of your viewers at GB News, head teachers, senior nurses, people who have their own businesses but don't make an absolute killing every year, but they earn good, OK money, right? They're going to be subject that if they want to actually try and do the responsible thing and save, they're now going to... That money that they're putting into their pensions is going to be subject to tax if it comes in at 30%. The way Keir Starmer is going to try, or Rachel Reeves is going to try and get round it, is that actually if you're a basic rate taxpayer, and of course that threshold is at 20%, you're actually going to see a benefit of an additional 10% allowance, which effectively is going to be a free gift from the government. But of course, you could legitimately say that if you are, because of fiscal drag, suddenly find yourself earning 50 grand or more, you are a working person. And the promise during the general election campaign from Keir Starmer was that he was not going to introduce new taxes on working people. And that's the point of debate.
But there's the working people thing, absolutely. But there is also the idea, I think, isn't there, of pensions and pensioners. So you're getting taxed in the first place, and then you're getting taxed again.
Oh, it's a double whammy. Yeah, absolutely. So when you put that money into your pension, and then, of course, you withdraw that money from your pension, you are taxed on that if it goes at the rate of income tax, right? So you're going to suddenly hit a double whammy. They're going to tax you twice on the same money that you've earned. So, I mean, it's...
That is big, isn't it?
It's huge, and it would amount to, it'd amount to 50, if they do it in that way, it could, go up to £50 billion. But to your point that you were playing that excerpt there from Keir Starmer in the House of Commons was, the mess is beyond anything that we imagined. We've got to clear up the public finances. We don't have a huge amount of money to play with, and that's what's going to be used to justify stepping in with a huge tax raid. And that's not counting, of course, what they could be doing around capital gains tax. They're not going to introduce it, of course, on primary homes, but they could put up the rates, and they could also look potentially on council tax as well, because, of course, at the moment there's a 4.99%. Anything above that needs a referendum. But they could give councils the wherewithal to put up taxes on that as well.
Well, you mentioned referenda, and there is another story in town. Nigel Farage used his maiden speech in Parliament yesterday to ask for a referendum on leaving the ECHR. He's not going to get one, obviously, but the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has already poured cold water on the idea. Not only has he vowed to keep the UK in the ECHR, he's also about to cosy up even more to the EU. So he'll meet with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen in a few weeks' time in a bid to reset relations. What can we expect here, Theo?
So there's going to be a focus on trade. We've talked previously about dynamic alignment, so making it, in effect, that we sign up in Britain to what we would call all of the EU rules and regulations in perpetuity. So if the EU changes the rules, then we're going to follow that. We're not going to have a debate about it. We're just going to follow those rules. And that would mean that when it comes to just-in-time manufacturing, for instance, particularly things like car manufacturing or chemicals, it'll be on an industry-by-industry basis, and we will sign up to that, and that's one of the areas they're looking at. And then what I think you'll see happen, Patrick, is that other industries will start putting up their hands and saying, actually, you know, if it saves us in the paperwork, we'll have that as well. But let's not forget, and Charles Michel, who of course is a very senior bureaucrat in Brussels, has said very clearly that actually there's going to be a cost to, you know, if we want something, the EU is going to ask for something in return. And one of the things they're looking at potentially is free movement for anybody 18 to 30 to come to the UK and work, or to Britain to work freely.
We'll have to watch this space. I'm sorry we got a bit squeezed there, Theo, but it just means we've got more to go at next week, doesn't it? So that was former LBC political editor Theo Usherwood there. Thank you very, very much. Look, up next, after a police officer was filmed kicking and stamping on a suspect's head at Manchester Airport, do you want a police force or a police service? It's a big debate, this. It's raging online, and we're going to do it right here in this studio next.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome along to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Gloomy skies overnight and into the start of Thursday for many of us. Outbreaks of rain, but it will turn brighter later on. Now, we started Wednesday with a ridge of high pressure. Didn't last long. Weather fronts are now moving in from the west, and they are thickening up the cloud in many parts of the UK and bringing extensive low cloud to western parts and southern parts of the country, with hill fog, coastal mist and areas of rain and drizzle. Nevertheless, with the largely cloudy skies overnight, it is going to remain mild in some places, rather muggy, 15 or 16 Celsius first thing. But if you're in the south and southwest, expect a gloomy start to Thursday. A lot of low cloud covering the hills, bringing some mist and fog to coastal parts as well, and some more persistent and heavier bursts of rain into South Cornwall and South Devon through the morning. Wales, cloudy and damp, the worst of the drizzle and low cloud over hills. Likewise for northwest England, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, something a little brighter first thing, certainly for eastern Scotland, some sunny spells coming through, largely dry here, showers pushing into western Scotland. And through the morning, we're going to see things cheer up across the northern two-thirds of the UK. The cloud will lift. There will be some cloud breaks, although there will still be some showers arriving across western Scotland, Northern Ireland into northern England. Mostly dry for Wales by the afternoon, as well as the Midlands, but for the south and southeast, outbreaks of rain, heavy at times, and as a result, significantly cooler compared with Wednesday. That rain's out of the way by Friday morning, and then for most, it's a much brighter start to the day. Sunny spells, but further showers are likely in places, especially, although not exclusively, across Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and western England. Saturday, more widespread and heavier downpours for a time, interspersed by sunny spells, sunshine on Sunday.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
£30,000 in cash has to be won. It's our biggest cash prize so far, and it could be yours. Charles was a winner. Listen to what he says about winning the Great British Giveaway.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing.
The next big winner could be you, with an extra £30,000 cash in your bank. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight. It's the clip everyone's talking about. Armed police get stuck right in at Manchester Airport. Do we think it was right or wrong? And
referendum.
The referendum.
Why don't we have a referendum?
should Britain have a referendum now on illegal and legal immigration? Plus,
what's it really like being a GP? I'm Dr. Asmine and I switched from hospital to community practice recently. Here are 5 things that surprised me.
I'll tell you what surprised me, Doctor. GPs are going to war on patients. They're threatening all kinds of things that could damage your health unless they get more pay. And a British Army officer stabbed in broad daylight outside his barracks. What really went on? And
we don't just need to change the sick note, we need to change the sick note culture.
The nominations for Tory leadership candidates are officially open now. Priti Patel's ally, Greg Smith MP, is live in this very studio, and on my panel tonight is former Cabinet Minister Michelle Donnellan, Director of the Popular Conservatives Mark Littlewood, and author Rebecca Reid. Oh yes, and I need you to tell me what happens next here, please. The sea, the boat's there. There we go. Get ready, Britain. Here we go. Do you want a police force or a police service? Next.
Just after 10 o'clock, the latest from the GB newsroom, and Kent police are saying the stabbing of a British Army officer near his barracks in Gillingham is not being treated as terrorism-related. However, they are being supported by counter-terror specialists. Detectives are continuing their investigations after witnesses reported hearing screams for help just before 6 o'clock yesterday evening near Brompton Barracks. Locals rushed to help the uniformed officer, who'd been stabbed multiple times just as the attacker, who was wearing a mask, fled the scene on a moped. A suspect was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder about 20 minutes later. After being pursued by members of the public, police recovered knives at the scene. The victim, aged in his 40s, was airlifted to hospital with serious injuries. He's in a stable condition. Meanwhile, a police officer who was filmed kicking the head of a man lying on the ground at Manchester Airport has been removed from operational duties. The male officer is seen holding a taser over the man who's lying face down before striking him twice. Greater Manchester Police has said firearms officers have been subject to a violent assault where they were punched to the ground, but it acknowledges the concerns of the conduct within the video. 2 men were arrested on suspicion of assault, assault of an emergency worker, affray and obstructing the police, while 2 other men were also arrested on suspicion of affray and assault of an emergency worker, police have confirmed to us. 3 officers, though, were taken to hospital for treatment. 1 female officer suffered a broken nose. In the House of Commons today, Sir Keir Starmer accused the previous government of losing control of Britain's borders as he took part in his first PMQs as Prime Minister. Reform UK's Rupert Lowe quizzed the Prime Minister on Labour's migration plans, claiming that failure to control the borders had damaged Britain's communities. The Prime Minister conceded that small boat crossings in the Channel are a serious issue, but he laid the blame on the Tories. And nominations open this evening to succeed Rishi Sunak as leader of the Conservative Party. Shadow Home Secretary James Cleverly announced last night that he's running to take the party's top job. In a video emphasising his credentials, the former Foreign and Home Secretary said the Tories need to re-establish its reputation as a party that helps to grow the economy and achieve people's aspirations. He's the first to announce a leadership bid, and any challengers need to get in quickly before nominations close on Monday.
Oh, I think they should go bankrupt. That'd be rather lovely. There's very few decent people in the Tory party. I certainly don't want Liz Truss or Johnson back again.
Well, they should be looking to appeal to their core voters and the policies that they present. Taxation for one issue, a main issue, a reason why I failed to vote for them this time.
There are no statesmen anymore. I don't consider Starmer to be a statesman or statesman material.
Now, 2 state Bentleys used by His Majesty the King are to be converted to run on biofuel over the next year, amid a boost in profits from the Crown estate. There are also plans to switch the monarchy's entire fleet of official cars to run on electric, while solar panels have been introduced at Windsor Castle. It comes as the estate's profits hit £1.1 billion, all of which goes to the Treasury. It means the sovereign grant, which funds the monarchy, will increase from 86 million to 132 million next year. Those funds being used to complete the final stages of renovations to Buckingham Palace. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Polly Middlehurst. I'm back in an hour. See you then.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
We have to ask ourselves whether we want a police force or a police service. Today, this clip of armed police dealing with a violent incident at Manchester Airport has massively divided opinion. Warning now, some viewers may find this video distressing.
Stop kicking people! You're on camera! Move back! Shut up! Move back! Hey! Move back! Move back! Move back! Move back! Say! Move back! Move back! Oi! Oi! Shut up! Move back!
OK, so here's the context. A statement from Greater Manchester Police says this. Assistant Chief Constable Wasim Chowdhury has issued this statement. We know that a film of an incident at Manchester Airport that is circulating widely shows an event that is truly shocking and that people are rightly extremely concerned about. The use of such force in an arrest is an unusual occurrence and one that we understand creates alarm. In advance of what is shown in the footage available, we were called to reports of an assault at Terminal 2, Manchester Airport, at 8:25 p.m. on Tuesday the 23rd of July. The alleged suspect was seen on CCTV at a ticket machine in the car park, and officers attended the location to arrest him. During our response, 3 officers were assaulted, 1 female officer suffered a broken nose, and the other officers were forced to the ground and suffered injuries which required hospital treatment. A male officer has been removed from operational duties, and we are making a voluntary referral of our policing response to the Independent Office of Police Conduct. 2 men have been arrested on suspicion of assault, assault of emergency worker, affray and obstructing police. 2 other men have also been arrested on suspicion of affray and assault of an emergency worker. Now, we will have to wait for the full investigation. But given the context of this being in an airport, a member of our armed forces being stabbed earlier in the day, by the way, as well, and a female officer's nose allegedly being broken, and the potential risk of an officer losing his weapon, having that weapon taken off him and used against him or others, some might think that action is justified. Others, of course, will not. But should we compare that to the type of policing we saw during the Leeds riots last week, where they just ran away?
Police is going.
Amy Chelsea say reform.
Look, they go to the police. They're chucking glass at me, look at them running.
Now, if we saw that in Leeds, and that is considered to be a police service, and if what we saw in Manchester is what we would consider to be a police force, I do suspect that many people might generally prefer the approach of a police force. But let's get the thoughts of my panel this evening. I've got former Cabinet Minister Michelle Donnellan, Director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, and we've also got author and journalist Becca Reid. Look, Mark, I'll start with you on this. Do you think that we should have a police force more than a police service?
Yes. The purpose of the police is, as necessary and proportionately, to use force or the threat of force to bring criminals to heel. Now, I mean, I don't want to go into details of the clip that we've seen. I don't know all the circumstances around it. And you shouldn't ever see a police officer sort of dishing out a beating for reasons of vengeance or, you know, because they've lost their mind. But we do need force use, sometimes lethal force, by the way. I mean, what I would not want to see our top police officers doing is replicating the US Secret Service, where the former president was nearly murdered, and the explanation was, oh, well, you know, health and safety governor. We can't go up onto the roof, it's sloping a bit. Even if it wasn't sloping, it's a bit hot up there. Now, sometimes you need to take an instantaneous decision under pressure. The US Secret Service has failed to do that. If you were to look back to the Gibraltar killings of 3 IRA terrorists in the 1980s, went all the way through court and everything, but they had to take an instant decision. Yeah. And I would hate our police officers to think, oh, I better not do anything in case I get into trouble. That's not to justify disproportionate force, but the police have to be about force being a resort that they can utilise.
Yeah, if the police feel as though they're in a situation, Michelle, where they are being attacked and they are, you know, in a situation where it's particularly volatile and things like that, I think that the public would expect them to take whatever action it takes to nullify that threat.
Well, the key primary function of the police is public safety, isn't it? So they're going to have to use any tool that they've got available to ensure that. That said, I don't condone police brutality, but it's very hard to comment on this clip because, you know, it's obviously a high-stakes environment. It's an airport. These could be suspected terrorists. They could be armed. They could be, you know, worse. They could have explosives, anything of that nature. We know that 3 police officers are now getting medical attention, so it's serious. They've obviously tried a lot before it's escalated. But police brutality, at the end of the day, can lead to a police state. So we do have to have limits. But if we do compare it to what happened last week in Leeds, where the police were facing lots of criticism for not acting in a responsive manner, not getting a grip of the situation, I think the two of them compared show you that actually you need balance, you need proportionality, and you need a police force that's working effectively for the general public.
Well, obviously, Rebecca, the overarching question here is, do we want a police force or a police service? I do seem to remember you actually... do you just want to defund the police, don't you?
I do want to defund the police, but whenever I say that, it gets very, very hot-tempered very, very quickly, because that doesn't mean no police of any matter. It means no police in the way that we currently have it. Now, I think the main problem with the police in this country is that the average wage they get paid is about £14 an hour. There's very, very little training on the job, and there's also very little further development. There are a massively overrepresented amount of domestic abusers in the police, and also it's a very high-stress job with very little support, particularly for emotional health. So you often end up with people who are coming from an armed forces background or other backgrounds where they've been really, really traumatised, being given a lot of responsibility for very little money with very little support, and then expecting them to be able to make really difficult snap decisions. You cannot be surprised that those people often end up making the wrong decision.
OK, all right. I do wonder, though, Mark, if we're in a situation at the moment where people feel as though the police are a bit of a joke, or people feel as though they can attack police officers, and that actually we should fear it. And whilst, again, you know, we don't want to go, because there will be an investigation, a proper investigation into everything that happened at Manchester Airport. What I will say is, though, when you see policing on the continent, to me, you don't mess around with police on holiday. You just don't mess around with them. And I think in this country, you see people who really do mess around with the police, actually.
Yeah, I think we've seen that an awful lot, and police officers backing off when they shouldn't have done. I can think of a lot of footage of protests in London where you'd actually think, you know, on first blush, looking at the videos, that the police should have intervened more. So I don't support... I'm not even sure Rebecca supports defunding the police. She just...
I do.
You support...
That's what that means.
Yeah.
That's what that means.
Well, I mean, you complained they weren't paid enough, so you probably want to pay them more, which is...
I want to pay fewer of them more, and I would also want them to have different specialities.
No, well, that's changing.
In lots of European countries, they have devolved police forces into two different
I'm all open for reform. I do think we do need to fund a police force, though. To be clear, I'm on the funding, not the defunding.
Do we not
side
also
of the
need to have, Michelle, coming to you, a healthy fear of the police?
No.
I think we need respect for the police. So you need to respect the office, and you need to recognise that they will take actions if you break or try to break the law. If you think they're a soft touch, it's fair game to any type of criminal.
But I think
and they're going to push their law, can't they?
I think that sense of respect for the police has really changed. Like, I do remember as a child being told, if you get lost, go and find a police person. And I would never tell my child that, given what I know about the enormous issues they have within the police, with abuse, post-Sarah Everard, things that have come to light. I would never suggest that my teenage daughter, not that she's a teenager now, would seek out a police person. I would say actively avoid them. I would say find a woman with a child.
I think that's sort of tarnishing the entire police force with one brush. So that was a tragic, horrendous case that the whole nation thought was absolutely despicable. But to say that all police officers, or generally, are of that mindset or approach, you know, my child is very young, but if he was in trouble when he was older, I would definitely say go and find a police.
Well, he's a boy, so he'd probably be all right.
Isn't what we're looking for something a bit akin to what we expect of a teacher in a school?
Exactly.
You want to be kind of respected.
Although respect's gone down as well.
But you probably don't want to be terrified of your teacher, but you respect them, and you want to know that if you step out of line, you're going to face consequences.
But how are you supposed...
But how are you a criminal? It's the right approach.
But how are you supposed to get that when people are 22 with no training and on very, very, very bad wages? You need to structure it differently.
Structure and fund it better.
Look, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. Again, you know, I will emphasise the context of the clip that's divided everybody. You know, you're at an airport, there's a bit of previous going on there, allegedly. You know, it's a very, very intense atmosphere. The officer's got a gun, which clearly there is some kind of fear that if somebody else gets hold of that weapon, you know, we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, but he's tied on the floor as well, just to represent that other side of it. There is a perfectly reasonable argument that that's not acceptable, that lots of people are also saying, because that is a tied person on the floor who's at that point no threat.
Well, you're factually incorrect about that, but obviously that doesn't seem to matter.
He's on the floor.
He's not tied up, though, was he?
He's got bombs by his back.
OK, all right. Coming up, I'll give you a first look at all tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press, and we'll be asking, is Nigel Farage right to call a referendum on immigration? But next, nominations have just opened for the next Tory leader. So who are the MPs backing? One of them joins me next is Greg Smith. He's live in the studio. Stay tuned.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
And this week, it's disabled adventurer Nick Wilson and rocket engineering director Elliot Dayson-Barber from the Institution of Engineering and Technology.
Yes, earlier this month, Nick Wilson summited Mount Snowdon unaided. The first time this has been attempted with the help of an engineered electric mobility chair called the Rock Climber.
Tell us what you did, when you did it, and why it's so amazing, because it's the first time this has been done, isn't it?
You feel lazy, you should try being me, going up a mountain and I was just pressing the accelerator. these poor buggers had to go and come up behind me. It still hasn't sunk in properly, you know, and to be the first disabled person to do it during Disability Pride Month is I couldn't have asked for anything else. But it's all possible because of Rock Engineering. You know, they've been working on this for the past 2 years to create this machine. I wouldn't be here because I was struggling a lot with loneliness and isolation. I was very suicidal, and they literally saved my life with this project.
The whole thing came around by accident. You know, meeting Nick, and he kind of highlighted some issues to us in terms of his accessibility, and he you know, he lives in Towcester, near where we're based, and he came down the high street and sort of said, I can't even get into the shops in the high street.
So, Nick, you just mentioned that the kind of place you were in before doing this, you were lonely, suicidal. Yeah. What was it like when you finally managed to scale Snowdon? Because I've done it on foot, and just being for anyone, being in nature and fresh air.
The one word that I think I've used throughout this is freeing. It is when you're so reliant on drop curves. It's freeing that you're not reliant on a hard-standing path or drop curves, wherever. You can, in rock climb, you can literally go anywhere you want. Yeah. And freeing is the big word, and it's amazing.
The People's Channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys Tonight. Now, in a moment, I'll give you a very first look at tomorrow's newspaper front pages, but I'm joined now by Conservative MP Greg Smith to discuss all things Tory leadership. It's actually a very big day for the Tory leadership because in the last few hours, nominations have opened. Let's remind ourselves, shall we, of the front runners. We've got former Home Secretary Suella Braverman, Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions Mel Stride, Shadow Minister for Security Tom Tugendhat, former Home Secretary Priti Patel, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick, and Shadow Home Secretary James Cleverly. He's announced that he is running, so as James Cleverly has announced already that he will. Former Trade Secretary and Minister for Women Kemi Badenoch as well. They're all expected to give it a go, apparently. Meanwhile, in a new YouGov poll, almost half of the Tory membership have said they would back a merger with Reform UK, but a majority of the 2024 Conservative voters believe Nigel Farage would do a very or fairly bad job as Tory leader. So pick the bones out of that one, everybody. Anyway, Greg, who are you backing? Who should run? Is it going to be Priti?
Look, I'm backing Priti Patel. That's well known. That's out there. I think she is the candidate that can do the best job at actually bringing us together and uniting. There is no sugarcoating the fact that we've just had the most enormous kicking in the country. There's only 121 of us left in the House of Commons. I'm lucky enough to be one of those. And the first thing we've got to do is we've actually got to pull ourselves together. The number of people who said to me on the doorsteps, look, you lot, you're fighting like ferrets in a sack. We're fed up of the division. We're fed up of everyone fighting each other. The first thing we've got to do is unite. And I think Priti has that ability to bring the whole party together again, to be that uniting figure. Experienced from opposition in the past when she was working with William Hague after the 1997 crushing defeat. Serious experience in the big offices of state, not least as Home Secretary. And someone who over the last few years has really kept her head down and got on with spreading the Conservative message. A legitimate Conservative who can bring the whole party together.
One of the big issues, though, facing whoever the next Tory leader is that they will obviously hope to become Prime Minister. And if they do become Prime Minister, then they'll have to work with the civil service again. And Priti Patel apparently didn't get on that well with them, did she?
Look, there was the one incident back when she was Home Secretary, and actually I think the country was behind her. She's a tough boss.
She was accused of bullying, wasn't she?
She's a tough boss. She wants to get stuff done. She has the nation's interests absolutely at heart. She had a serious job for the nation's policing, for introducing a points-based immigration system, for doing the enormous responsibility of work around counter-terror and things like that come with being Home Secretary, and she wanted a good job done. And I don't think anyone's going to criticise her for being a tough boss and wanting results and delivery.
Let's have a look at a couple of people that she's up against, potentially. So I believe that when the front pages land with us here on this show in a few minutes' time, we're going to see Tom Tugendhat in and amongst it, saying that he's going to run to be the Tory leader and he's prepared to leave the ECHR. Will that not be an important, dividing line for people here?
Look, it's a debate. I'm not going to criticise any of my colleagues that are running for the Conservative Party leadership. Actually, I want this to be a positive debate about who can pull us together, who can have the best platform going forwards on policy that will re-excite the nation about the Conservative Party at the next general election, as well as actually sorting out some of the nuts and bolts of our party, the campaigning machine, the way we select candidates, maybe the way that we do look at the party chairmanship going forward as a whole party that properly engages and enthuses our members in the country, and that's what we've really got to be focused on. But yes, of course policy issues will matter. Of course things like the ECHR are live in people's minds at the moment, but this is actually a more fundamental question for the whole membership of the Conservative Party, MPs included. We've lost the right to be heard, and we've got to win that right to be heard back before we can get into debates over the ECHR or whatever it might be.
OK, all right. So when it comes to Pretty as well, you know, we've seen today that Labour are now calling it irregular immigration, not illegal immigration. You know, they're even changing the language on stuff like that. So Pretty Patel would have to try to sort that out, wouldn't she? Well, is that going to be a key part of it?
We've always known, right, that Labour are soft on immigration. You know, it doesn't take a genius to work that out. And to suddenly start getting this change of narratives, instead of illegal to irregular or whatever they're going to change it to next, is just what we expect from Labour. And part of our job as a responsible professional opposition right now is to call that out and to actually ensure the nation's priorities are being met by this new government. We've got little chance of Labour delivering on immigration, be it illegal immigration or capping legal migration numbers. But Priti Patel is the tough cookie that can actually get that done.
Is there a risk now that they all just pick lumps out of each other? So what we end up seeing at the Tory party conference, instead of a beauty pageant, is everyone as a circular firing squad of Conservatives all pointing at each other, going, well, when you were a Home Secretary, you did this, or, you know, you didn't do that, or you didn't do... There is a real risk there, isn't there? I mean, is there, you need to get this wrapped up ASAP, don't you?
I think we do, but actually we've got to have that period of reflection. We've got to have that internal monologue that accepts what's just happened to us at the ballot box just a few weeks ago. And we've got to accept that before we can actually move on to choosing a leader and to re-earning the right to be heard again.
Do you not think there's a chance that if the Tories go for a wet, that that's just game over? And you look at the other thing here, you know, a majority of 2024 Tory voters believe that Nigel Farage, well, they say, would do a very or fairly bad job as Tory leader. But if you also look at some of the other stats, it's bizarre, this. A lot of Tory voters actually want him to be the next Tory party leader. Well, he is more popular. You know, would Pretty consider a merger with Nigel? She's ruled it out, but I know that she was previously quite close with Nigel.
No, the merger with Reform is off the table as far as we're concerned, because Reform just took millions of votes off the Conservative Party and have directly caused, through their campaign, you know, all credit to them for winning 4 million votes, but directly caused the size of the Labour majority that we now see in the House of Commons. We can't go down a path of suddenly merging. What we've got to do...
Half of Tory voters apparently do want a merger. I mean, Tory members, sorry. Want it. I mean, it might be quite a useful tactic for the members to tell them that you would be open to a merger.
So we've got to have a debate with the membership. We've got not knock chunks out of each other, as you suggested, but actually have a proper debate about the future of the Conservative Party. I want a leader who is a full-on, legitimate, low-tax, small-state, freedom-loving, strong national defence Conservative. I think Priti Patel is that figure. And then we've got to set out a policy platform as Conservatives that can excite the nation to vote for us whenever that next election comes.
So just quickly, and finally, Greg, so the nominations, I think, close on Monday. When are we expecting Priti Patel to be on that ballot, do we think?
We've got the nomination papers. We were only issued with them today, and I have every confidence they'll be in by the deadline on Monday.
Lovely stuff. Greg, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. Thank you very, very much. That is Conservative MP there, Greg Smith. Coming up, do you want a referendum on immigration? That's what Nigel Farage is proposing. And my panel returns to debate that. Also on the way, doorbell footage. This doorbell footage captures the moment a British Army officer was stabbed in broad daylight outside of barracks. I'll show you the full clip, and I'll give you the latest on that. But next, yes, I've got the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, and find out what GPs are up to now. Spoiler alert, it's not making you better. Stay tuned.
Hello again and welcome along to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Gloomy skies overnight and into the start of Thursday for many of us. Outbreaks of rain, but it will turn brighter later on. Now, we started Wednesday with a ridge of high pressure. Didn't last long. Weather fronts are now moving in from the west and they are thickening up the cloud in many parts of the UK and bringing extensive low cloud to western parts and southern parts of the country with hill fog, coastal mist and areas of rain and drizzle. Nevertheless, with the largely cloudy skies overnight, it is going to remain mild, in some places rather muggy, 15 or 16 Celsius first thing. But if you're in the south and southwest, expect a gloomy start to Thursday. A lot of low cloud covering the hills, bringing some mist and fog to coastal parts as well, and some more persistent and heavier bursts of rain into South Cornwall and South Devon through the morning. Wales, cloudy and damp, the worst of the drizzle and low cloud over hills. Likewise for northwest England, but for Scotland and Northern Ireland, something a little brighter first thing, certainly for eastern Scotland, some sunny spells coming through, largely dry here, showers pushing into western Scotland. And through the morning, we're going to see things cheer up across the northern two-thirds of the UK. The cloud will lift. There will be some cloud breaks, although there will still be some showers arriving across western Scotland, Northern Ireland into northern England. Mostly dry for Wales by the afternoon, as well as the Midlands, but for the south and southeast, outbreaks of rain, heavy at times, and as a result, significantly cooler compared with Wednesday. That rain's out of the way by Friday morning, and then for most, it's a much brighter start to the day. Sunny spells, but further showers are likely in places, especially, although not exclusively, across Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales and Western England. Saturday, more widespread and heavier downpours for a time, interspersed by sunny spells, sunshine on Sunday.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Akweer. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Emily Carver. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Patrick Christys tonight, and I have got the very first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages now. Let's do it. So we start with the Metro. Horror crash arrest. Police hold driver over 6-death tragedy. Yeah, this is, of course, a really horrific car crash that basically wiped out an entire family, unfortunately. Let's go to the Eye. Corbyn trying to form rebel alliance to fight Starmer. We touched on this a bit earlier. He's really having multiple meetings now with 4 other independents and presumably these Labour rebels as well. So there we go. Let's go to the Daily Mail. Is this the end for our copper coins? The Treasury orders no new coins for the first time ever, and it expects to mint no extra 1p and 2p's in the coming years. Well, it's interesting, really, isn't it? We had that massive tech outage, and it kind of highlighted the importance of occasionally maybe carrying a bit of cash on you, just in case the card machine goes down, but apparently we're not going to get much more of it. Let's go to The Guardian. Revealed rich Western countries lead global gas and oil expansion. And protesters, Netanyahu addresses Congress in America, and a house kicked right off in America, it's fair to say. But we're going to focus in a bit on this, what's on the front of the Telegraph. Tugendhat, I'm ready to leave the ECHR. So, the nominations for the Conservative leadership race opened today. Tom Tugendhat even, straight out the traps. He's saying that he's going to run and that he is willing to leave the ECHR. And it brings me perfectly onto my wonderful panel and onto this particular story that we're going to be covering with them as well, because it merges well. Because Nigel Farage has called for a referendum on membership of the ECHR yesterday. He's actually got one step further today. He's now demanding a referendum on immigration in general. He said that the majority of MPs are out of step with the public when it comes to illegal migration. and that the issue should be put to the people. Michelle, look, I will start with you on this. So, do you think that we should have a referendum on, illegal migration or legal migration?
No, absolutely not. I think it allows the government to get off scot-free. And I think Nigel's actually being too soft on the Labour Party on this one, because by devolving it to a referendum, first of all, it's going to take a huge amount of time, a year to 2 years, when this is the top issue that was shared by voter after voter, doorstep after doorstep. It's not just important to our economy, it's an issue of national security too. We haven't got that time to just wait around and keep accepting people in the meantime. And this is a government that's elected to actually fix this problem. They should be getting on with the job, not just farming it off to a referendum.
OK, I will just stick with you, because the other aspect of this is Tom Tugendhat throwing his hat into the ring massively now. We just had confirmation moments ago that Priti Patel is definitely going to do that as well. Yeah. James Cleverly is. Who's your money on?
So my money is on Kemi. I think that she is the candidate that is, while she's been involved and had many roles at the top level, she's still got the fresh face and the appeal, and she can unite and bring the party together, but is also forceful. And that's something that we need if we're going to tackle reform, if we're going to tackle the many challenges that we've had as a party over the few years. So I think she is the candidate to watch.
All right, OK, good stuff. Mark, this idea of having a referendum on immigration, some people would say, well, we do vote for that every few years.
Yeah. Look, I'm not quite sure what Farage means by the referendum on immigration. I mean, that is a practical policy that should be in a party's manifesto that they then attempt to execute. I am more sympathetic about the ECHR referendum. That is a constitutional matter about whether we are signatories or not. And I can imagine a referendum becoming necessary if the Conservatives don't change tack here pretty fast. Interesting that Greg Smith, who's obviously a supporter of Priti Patel, seemed open to it. Tom Tugendhat, usually associated with the One Nation side of the Conservative Party, I haven't read the fine print, seems open to it. I think Robert Jenrick will probably be in favour of pulling out of ECHR. So if you were to have the Conservative Party, the official opposition, in favour of withdrawal, and the Labour government in favour of staying in, then it seems to me you don't need a referendum. The next general election will sort it out. We had a referendum. I was just asking Michelle before we came on air. She was on the Remain side. I was on the Leave side. We had a referendum because the topic of EU membership actually divided within parties as well, and the Conservative Party was especially divided on it. But I think this could be that the Tories come out for leaving ECHR, Labour want us to stay in. It could be a big dividing line for the next few years.
Well, quite possibly. And Rebecca, I'll just say, so apparently, according to this, Mr Tugendhat's position on the ECHR has changed since 2022, when he dismissed calls to leave the convention. However, he apparently has become increasingly concerned about it overreaching into our lives, he says. And actually, this could be a key dividing point, because Keir Starmer's house-building plans, supposedly there was an article today about how people are now saying those could contravene our human rights to have housing developments in our areas. If he ever decides that he might actually dare to want to deport anyone, then he might find himself coming up against the ECHR in that as well. There might actually be a situation where leaders of this country realise that if they want to do anything, then they might have to try and get around the ECHR.
I think it's so telling that Tom Tugendhat's one of those names that's floated around for years and years and years, and he's never really done anything that people can really pin on. And then suddenly, weirdly, since 2022, he's had a huge epiphany, and now he really cares about this. That is just boring, seeing which way the wind is blowing. Similarly, Nigel Farage, like, honestly, just go and do your job. Go and serve your constituents, go and sit in your office and listen to people and do your actual job.
Probably want to leave the ECHR.
But we need a referendum. He just lives for a campaign. And I genuinely look at that and I'm like, what is hurting inside you that you need something to be screaming about all the time? You have got the thing you finally wanted. 8 times it took you to be an MP. Be an MP. Stop going to America. Stop shouting up wanting things. Get on with your job.
Some policy suggestions.
It's not a policy suggestion. It's how to make himself the main character again. It is attention-seeking. He doesn't actually care about any of this stuff. He is just shouting about it.
Many seats, including my own, but at the end of the day, he's talking about the top issue that people care about.
Which we're also working on, but the idea that you want to suddenly... Like, Brexit was so bad for this country, morale, and the way that we talk to each other and the way that politics was handled got so toxic, as if we need that again. We just had...
To you, Rebecca, that the opposition party shouldn't really say anything and should just wish for the Labour Party
to
do the best they can and should sit quietly in their office responding to constituencies'
Well, I do think...
up to opposition parties to oppose.
I do think...
Put forward ideas and hold the government to account. That's how it works.
This is a big issue.
It's not that at all. It's that I think that this should be about public service and getting on with doing your job and serving the people who nominated you, rather than childish point scoring, which is what got your lot kicked out.
That's fine. I'm not convinced, though...
Why is it childish point scoring?
I'm not convinced, though, that when it comes to certain things, like when we're going to be clearing the prison spaces and we're going to be releasing quite a few potentially foreign violent offenders, because there are about 12,000 foreign offenders in our prisons, we might want to try to deport some of those. We might find difficulties there. We might want to try to sort out what's going on in the Channel. That might require us to be a bit nimble legally with what we're doing, etc. I think that leaving the ECHR is going to be a big thing going forward. Where are you on it?
So I think that since the election, everything has changed. So in our manifesto, we said, do it as a last resort. So try everything else first, including Miranda, etc. One by one, the Labour government is removing all those other things, so it is the only resort left. So I actually think you would leave because all the other options have been removed, and the reality is that this is not a government with a plan to actually tackle immigration.
Well, I mean, it does. You can find it on their website. It's very clearly written out.
Now, not illegal immigration. So it's not even illegal immigration anymore.
And they've also cancelled Bibi Stockholm this week because they say magically somehow the backlog's going to be gone by January.
Sorry, the boat that had listeria in the water. You thought that was so great we should pay for it again.
So by saying that somehow the backlog's going to be gone by January, that to me implies all they're going to do is say everybody can stay to get rid of the backlog.
I mean, the key issue is this. Do you actually think we can solve the immigration problem just by sort of sharper, better execution of policy, a beefed-up border force? That seems to be what...
But that's not all they're doing. That's not all they're proposing. They're going to work with Europe. They're going to have digital fingerprinting. They are going to have so many other...
I understand that anybody who disagrees with you is guilty of childish point scoring.
That's not... That's really unlike you.
It is reasonable for people to suggest that if we don't change the legal and constitutional framework, then it's going to be very difficult to have effective immigration policy. You're entitled to disagree with that, but that, I think, is going to be a big dividing line in party politics.
But I just don't think you need a referendum to decide that, because that is going to delay things again. We won't tackle the...
All right, guys, look, unfortunately, because I was quite enjoying all of that, actually, I'm going to have to draw a line under it. But this is a very serious topic. A British soldier is in a serious but stable condition after he fell victim to a horrific attack near an army barracks in Kent. Witnesses reported hearing a huge scream just before 6 o'clock yesterday evening in Gillingham. Locals rushed to help the soldier, and they saw the attacker stab him repeatedly and then flee on a moped. A suspect was arrested on suspicion of attempted murder about 20 minutes later. The police are yet to rule out terrorism as a possible motive. And I just want to stress that. The police are yet to rule out terrorism as a possible motive, but they do say that the suspect may have mental health problems. GB News has obtained doorbell camera footage that doesn't show the attack, but you can quite clearly hear the terrified screams. Now, again, a warning to our viewers, you might find listening and viewing this distressing. You said there's a heck of a lot more to come from that story, don't you? We will endeavour to bring you the very latest on that as and when we get it. Coming up, equestrian legend Charlotte Dujardin was filmed whipping her horse 24 times. She's now been axed from Team GB. But is the punishment too harsh? We're going to be talking about that when we crown tonight's greatest Brittany Union jackass. But next, this is a big one, this. GPs are threatening to see fewer patients under plans to protest over pay. Are they now just showing a complete disdain for the British public? Have they gone to war with you? Let me know your views. I'll be back as well with that and more of tomorrow's front pages very, very shortly. Stay tuned.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Anton Dubek, and even I know that's a big name, has become the latest Strictly Come Dancing pro to come under some sort of fire amid the show's misconduct probe.
Yeah, his former partner, Layla Ruiz, told her lawyers that Dubek made offensive comments to her back in 2009.
Which you have to accept is quite a while ago, but it's almost as though things are building. He has since apologised, and she has accepted the apology. But what on earth is absolutely going on inside Strictly Come Dancing?
I have to say it has been a strictly witch hunt this week because, you know, it's been like the snowball effect. You know, a couple of months ago we had Amanda Abbington who came out with accusations against Giovanni Panice.
Now, I don't even know who she is. Who is
she? So she's an actress. She's been on there she is. She left the show early because she said due to personal distress. She now then came out and said actually working with Giovanni Panice caused her PSTD. Another dancer, Graziano Di Prima, who's now left because there was videos that had surfaced that apparently he was physically abusive towards his partner Zara McDermott, who this week actually came up with her side of the story and said that actually during training sessions she was kicked by him and physically abused by him. So he's now left the show.
Is this a case of celebrities being snowflakes, or is there something in this? Is this something more sinister?
You know, Martin, there's always two sides to the story, and the dancers are coming from that point of view where they say it's because we want to win. But when you're a celebrity who might not have much dancing experience, you think about the glitz and the glamour of Strictly, but what we're hearing now is a lot of celebrities over the years have said, I've been left with PSTD. I was physically abused when I was on Strictly, verbally abused. And so now we're getting all the other sides to what actually celebrities are saying they're experiencing.
The People's Channel.
Hello, welcome back. It's time for the rest of your front pages for tomorrow. Let's do it. So, The Times. Army officer fights for life after knife attack outside barracks. We touched on that a few moments ago. Labour plans thousands of offshore wind turbines. So apparently Ed Miliband is going to announce a deal with the Crown Estate. Time for state to, quote, to own and build things again. Should be terrifying to hear those words coming out of Ed Miliband's mouth, but there we go. This is the start of Great British Energy, everybody. Labour's publicly owned energy company, and they're going to form a partnership with the Crown Estate, which owns swathes of Britain's seabed. So, all right, we'll probably be talking about that quite a lot more on tomorrow's show, I imagine. But let's go to the Daily Express. Senior army officers stabbed outside barracks. Yep, we've spoken about that. The Mirror have also gone with that. So, man 24 held over attack. Soldier in uniform is repeatedly knifed in a broad daylight stabbing frenzy. It's, and then big letters here, appalling. Now, police have arrested a knife suspect. You know, there's some confusion over whether or not they have ruled out potential terrorism, whether or not they've ruled in mental health issues. And we also, I think, don't we, await to find out a little bit more detail about who they may have arrested when it comes to this attack. That could be quite an interesting development. But, yes, before all of that, I would just like to also talk about a story that I think affects us all, because it does affect all our health and it affects our GP appointments. I personally thought this was an absolutely shocking story when I read it. GPs are threatening to cut the number of appointments they offer each day under plans to protest overpay. So you heard that right. Should the vote go through, this national, quotes, collective action will be introduced from next week. Now, it could see appointments cut by a third, supposedly, according to some reports as well, things like refusing to refer you to a specialist. I mean, it's bizarre. I mean, Mark, I'm going to throw it to you first on this. For me, the idea that a GP, who is, I think, pretty well paid, could refuse to see you or refer you to support, I think is borderline criminal.
Yeah, I'm pretty shocked by this, and I think that GPs and those who work in the National Health Service can't have their cake and eat it here. Broadly speaking, where we're looking at the NHS or any other sector of the economy, I think pay should be attached to your productivity. That, that's a rough rule of thumb. You can't perfectly measure everybody's productivity. But public sector productivity has fallen in recent years. They are producing less per hour than they used to. Yet their pay demands are way above inflation. How can that be so? And my starting point in dealing with the doctors, the nurses, everybody else would be to say, look, if you can show that productivity is going up, that's great, your pay will go up. But if you're going to cut your number of appointments, your pay will go down.
I just feel like this will kill people.
Well, look, I don't agree with the striking or withdrawing care, and I think it is the wrong decision. But you can understand why they're doing it under a Labour government, because they're pushing at an open door. They know that Labour's in bed with the unions. They're probably going to give in on these.
Were they not doing this under your government?
So we stood clear and firm on this topic because we've got to give
they were doing
pay
it.
rises.
But they were doing it to you guys too,
Not
right?
at this level. GPs weren't doing this.
But you had doctor strikes through the whole thing.
We did not see GPs refusing to refer people to specialists. We didn't see them cutting down the amount of appointments per day. But I think the broader issue is that we need NHS reform.
Yeah, exactly.
That we've got an NHS system that was set up for post-war Britain. We now have a bigger population. We have more expensive pharmaceuticals. We have technology. We have per head usage is higher. Expectations are higher. We can't just carry on burying our head in the sands. We need to inject a lot more technology and AI into our NHS to actually support our doctors.
All right, I get that. Rebecca, look, you know, everyone's entitled to their view on it. I'll just be really honest with you. I think people might be more willing to support the GPs if they already felt like they were getting a good service from the NHS. Unfortunately, I know quite a lot of people who have died on the NHS or are now dying as a result of poor care on the NHS. And I just wonder with this, if you get an appointment and a GP decides not to attend it, and they happen to be on a salary of around £100,000 a year...
Which a lot of them aren't.
Which a lot of them are.
But a lot of them also aren't.
Fine.
And also,
is that OK? You know, is that not the job to save lives?
But the argument here, the predominant thing they're worried about is funding for practices. So it's not just that they're looking for more money in their actual paycheck, it's that they want more funding for their practices. So they want to be able to have more staff there, maybe employ some nicer receptionists, and also have more, you know, in general, the equipment that you need and to keep things safe and clean.
You look an 84-year-old woman in the eye and you say, sorry...
Yeah, striking is really... I mean, in my experience, whenever I've been in hospital when there have been strikes, if you are very elderly or you have a very small child, they will always prioritise that. So it's actually people like us who would be...
with early signs of cancer that suffer.
Sure, and nobody thinks this is nice and fun, but striking is an important tool for negotiation. And if the only way to go on strike as a doctor is to do less work or do no work, they could refuse to work at all, and they're not going to do that. Reducing it is the softest way to strike possible.
You see,
and again,
I think very much to Michelle's point, this sort of stuff doesn't happen in the rest of Western Europe. The NHS appears to be permanently in crisis. Nearly always there's some industrial dispute going on. A German friend of mine said he was looking back at the last time there was a winter crisis in the German healthcare system. The last time a winter crisis in the German healthcare system was reported was 1945. Right. And you can probably imagine why the German healthcare system was in crisis in 1945. We've clearly got something structurally wrong. The rest of the world would think this is insane. And I'm with Michelle. I think we've got to be very open-minded about changing the system.
But no one disagrees with you. No one is saying the NHS doesn't need reform. Everyone agrees the NHS needs reform. That's a basic point.
Yeah, but saying you agree with it and actually doing it are two different things.
I think there's a moral point right at the heart of this, which is whether or not fundamentally it's OK for people who are medical professionals to withdraw care for people. But we will be talking about this in more detail tomorrow, actually, because it is a big topic. Now, though, this is a dramatic moment. Get ready, it's dramatic. OK, a giant humpback whale caused chaos off the coast of New Hampshire in America. Yeah, there he is. Humpback whale, plonks himself right on the back of that fishing boat. So the two fishermen aboard the vessel had a lucky escape, where 16-year-old Colin Yeager and his brother Wyatt pulling the man to safety. So the whale, they get out of the boat's capsized, and the lads you see in the video there, they've all got to get in and pull them to safety. All in all, everyone had a whale of a time. A bit of me died then. All right, it's time to reveal today's greatest Britain and Union jackass. All right, greatest Britain, Mark.
Honorary for me, Ryan Reynolds. Right. Known to some as the owner of Wrexham Football Club, but more important than that, he plays the character of Deadpool in the new Marvel movie. That franchise has been on the bones of its backside for a while, but all of the lefty critics hate this new film, and all of the fans love it. It's going to be brilliant, and I think Ryan Reynolds has single-handedly saved the greatest cinema franchise in our lifetime.
I saw a one-star review of this earlier today from, dare I say it, said lefty critics, and to be honest, I just assume maybe it's an awful film.
No, the fans are saying it's great. It's going to make $1 billion, possibly $2 billion. I'm seeing it on Friday. I reckon Ryan Reynolds has saved this franchise. The last few Marvel films have been poor. This, in my view, is what cultural heritage should really be about, saving Marvel movies.
Well, OK, all right. Michelle, who's your greatest Britain?
So mine is Sharon Davis. So she's actually from my neck of the woods, and she's faced a lot of abuse online, like intense levels, for speaking out against trans athletes being able to compete, trans women competing with biological women. And today we saw Lisa Nandy, the new Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport, a job I did myself, who's basically given the green light for all sporting authorities and bodies to allow trans women to compete against and compete with biological women. Now, I think that Sharon is a hero for actually standing up again and saying this isn't fair, this isn't a government on our side, or standing up for equality, and pressing it once more.
OK, all right. Rebecca, who's your greatest Britain, please?
Mine is Jess Phillips MP, who said this week that it could take up to 20 years to directly address the violence against women and girls epidemic in this country. But she's really stepping up to it, and she's certainly not throwing any platitudes. She's willing to actually do the work. OK,
lovely stuff. OK, 3 great choices. Today's winner is Sharon Davies, though, of the Greatest Britain. Right, now we're going to have to be rapid with this, very quick. Who's your union, Jack?
Cressida Gettin, Just Stop Oil activist, been banged up for a year. Her mother thinks she's a hero. She's going to miss her brother's wedding. Her brother's presumably called Tarquin or Sebastian.
She got 4 years, not a year.
Right, OK.
Yeah, so Mr Coburn, who is Sadiq Khan's new high-carbon environment chief, as a councillor, he has racked up 40,000 air miles whilst telling his council constituents that they should be conscious of how they travel.
An eco-hypocrite, some would say.
Yeah, and he's going to get £148,000 for this role.
Ugh. Plus loads of air miles. Right, OK.
Yeah. Mine is Charlotte Dujardin, who was hitting her horse. Posh people have a weird thing that hitting horses is fine. It's not chic and it's not fine.
Yeah, no, fair. All right, OK, good choices again. Meet Coburn is today's winner of the Union Jackass Award. So Michelle's doubled up on her debut on this show. So
Happy
well
days.
done. Thank you, everybody. I've got to go now, but I'll see you tomorrow at 9.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome along to the latest forecast from the Met Office for GB News. Gloomy skies overnight and into the start of Thursday for many of us. Outbreaks of rain, but it will turn brighter later on. Now, we started Wednesday with a ridge of high pressure. Didn't last long. Weather fronts are now moving in from the west and they are thickening up the cloud in many parts of the UK and bringing extensive low cloud to western parts and southern parts of the country with hill fog, coastal mist and areas of rain and drizzle. Nevertheless, with the largely cloudy skies overnight, it is going to remain mild, in some places rather muggy, 15 or 16 Celsius first thing. But if you're in the south and southwest, expect a gloomy start to Thursday. A lot of low cloud covering the hills, bringing some mist and fog to coastal parts as well, and some more persistent and heavier bursts of rain into South Cornwall and South Devon through the morning. Wales, cloudy and damp.